아래 당도 고베 동안은 드비게 타바 람니림바 냠솔렘바라 때네 당은저 고알이 저거와 지사 동아세야다 디기주야디 람냠솔렘바라 때네 안도고래 디네자당은저 람냠솔렘비림바 안도디 도당 텐전에 뭐 손실 세상 된디수 되나 인보 추뒤시네야 안제르메 제든 마가도 자줄람는 징난마 안주도 손샤바 된가도 된마 나 어두스네 된마다 슈거와 다디에 슈에게 삼대 그 생각주야 제 최년비가라 안지네기 견솜다 튕긴 두시 죽된비고네 안지 연구래 세다 다데네게 자 튕긴 두시 죽이나네 안데스마 셰야들바 차고래.
Good evening. So we're continuing to look at this remarkable text, the Middle Lamrim by Lama Tsongkhapa, in which he presents the stages for training our mind, or the stages for cultivating paths that will lead to the attainment of liberation from the sufferings of samsara. So this Middle Lamrim is a condensed presentation of the complete and unmistaken sequence of trainings to embark on so as to attain freedom from suffering in its entirety. Last week we continued to look at the chapter on how to listen to the Dharma, and in particular we looked at the division on the actual way to listen, giving up the three faults of a vessel, and we started looking at relying on the six perceptions.
치유 튕긴이 토네다 부순 소바디기 땡기 대와다 아니 지기 동안 때에 매바디 쇠투에게 있잖아 저기는 매바로와 매바래 내가 됐어스 펜바로치 디기 주야다 됐어스 내가 강아시야 존마도 땡기 디기 주야다 아니 땡기 동안 쇠투에 매 친구 벌레되네 매바래 다 매도 안 가르쳐 두고 그래서 낭 삼로 돈에 교왔던 거래 해서 그러다 당은 저기 지사 삼로 교와 간에 했던 거라서 삼로 땅탕이 림바데네 땅고 그래 살다 람림이 냠랭이 림바시되다 삼로 땅다 데네 땅고 그래 두스네 삼로디 곰전에 열게 땅고 그래 해야지 딘마 디순고로 와다도.
So all beings long to experience only happiness. No one wants to experience any problems or difficulties at all. And in terms of how to attain happiness, we tend to focus on transforming our outer world. But no matter what material possessions one has or material development that surrounds one, these only lead to temporary happiness, happiness that really doesn't last beyond just some moments. The lasting, sustained happiness that we long for, this only comes about through the radical transformation of our way of thinking. So the Tibetan word Lamrim literally is the graduated stages of the path. And these are the graduated stages by which to train our mind so as to cultivate mental paths that lead to lasting happiness, a happiness that will never ever be punctuated by even a moment of suffering.
돌로야 작바랍지요 반나 쪼바르신데 그 주인이 봐 지게 대반 매왔어야다 되네 간주 수불이야 안 지게 작바랍지는 수부 주인이 매왔어고 니 나신 당한주 셈라야 뇌길 뭐 작발 마서나 안 가려서는 징념모 비리팅 아주 념모 받아 념모베 사번디게다 아주 치 수부게 잡아나시래 제가 디가 좀 강한테 버려. 제가 디마 다 둘로 주바나신 전에 어떤 적이디 마 매워서고 디 매워서 다들라 삼단하 되니 삼단에 돈에 다 매워서 그래 사지 온두신에 대송 거 받아가지고 제가 디네기 냠내기 림바치 다들 람림 세팅한테 디고는 로프라지 거 받아.
Just like we wash our clothes or wash our body in order to take something that is dirty and make it clean. So too with our mind, in that our mind is polluted by other consciousnesses, namely those which are designated as afflictions, those which afflict our mind. So it's these that cause us pain and harm. These faulty ways of thinking are what cause all our troubles and emotional upheaval. So it's these that, just like when we clean dirty clothing or wash a dirty body, it's our mind that we need to cleanse or purify from these afflictions. And the way to do so is through training our mind in these graduated sequences of training, cultivating the paths, the Lamrim, in our own continuum.
Des nenden nyamso langba le ne chue du she se di sungor da dondala khar sungor sa ngazu neba te du she so susun ngazu subo neba inda da nga neba re ne de sa u sembe samlo sungor wa chesa neba te du she la bi de susun neba re samya jyo maro da neba khar so usna da gidi na nyomong be ne di ne de sa da ngi gylo nyomong ba de yores da nyomong ba meba so udu sembe samlo di gidi na di samdang gore si or ba da pene neba de gar so da gidi na nga na gyo da ne 나지 기디 매와 차기 나산베게 삼노단 거와 어디 나지 가술이야 기디 나 강아 차데 녀모 두숨디 강아 제어디 네데 녀모 두숨 네데 디바 매와 소고레 당아 디 매와 소고도 산베게 삼노디 땅고 그래 사실 중고로와 지난 디 안다 네데 매와 소발라 가서 거세네 가서 네바 네 맨산에 맨디 가서 nen데 냠소 람발레지도 메디 뒤도 따다따다 간에 사고 마노와다 마추바지 세베나 메나제 자투고로 어디 나신다 나주게 라미 가서 냠링 짐바 손셰교디 나주게 마노와 마추바지 냠소 랑고고레스 nen데지네 베즈여지네 춘르지네 냠소 랑고레스 디 냠소 마라바이나 나주게 녀모도 숨디 메와서 투고 말해 디 야고지 냠소 랑바이나 단 녀모도 메와서 투고레스 해야지 안도 숨고로와 되네 자당 안도디 가서 디셔야 되다 디네기 nen데 냠소 랑발레 네스비 두시에서 나신 당한주게 손레메 손셰베게 맨나제 담가디 나주게 지하고 진ям서 랭고래 디냠발에 되네 네바메바 네데 뉴모도 수미네데 메바 소고래서 안디기신 디고시로 와당자.
As mentioned last week, we looked at the three faults of a vessel and came to the 6 perceptions. Of the 6 perceptions, we've covered the first 3 and are on the 4th. So the first was perceiving oneself as a patient. The second perception was perceiving the one expounding the Dharma as a doctor. The third perception is perceiving the instructions as medicine. And the one that we are on is perceiving persistent practice as the cure. So this is a skillful and therefore important presentation to become familiar with, familiar in the sense of it being deeply integrated to our way of thinking so that it impacts on our perception. We need to recognize that we are ill, because generally people do not recognize the illness that the Dharma points out. So the illness that is being identified here and that we need to recognize for ourselves is the mere presence of the afflictions. That these minds which afflict us, or afflictions or delusions, these minds which afflict us or delude us, that totally alter our perception from reality, we need to recognize that these afflictions are the source of all our pain and suffering. So we need to recognize the role that these play in our life. This is how we come to recognize that we are patients and what the cause of our illness is. And to the extent that we recognize that it's our afflictions that cause all our misery and sorrow, we will focus on applying the medicine that is prescribed by the doctor. In other words, apply the teachings of the Buddha that has been prescribed by our teacher to transform our way of thinking. Because to the extent we're recognizing this in a process, we'll recognize that the outer world is not the source of our suffering and our pain. it is a faulty way of thinking. So to the extent we recognize this, we will want to apply the medicine that is being prescribed, the unmistaken and complete paths of the Lamrim that we need to cultivate within us. And in terms of then of the outline that we are on, we will recognize that because of our long habituation to these afflictions, persistent practice is indispensable for the medicine, the teachings of the Buddha, to have the required impact on us. Therefore, mere occasional practice is insufficient, but persistency is indispensable.
퇴바 망부 제베나 퇴비 된데 냠수 말라베나 아나 저기 뇽모 발트투 마레스 그신 된마 셰르다 된마 지바레 다된마 지텔라 샤드레 사실 샤브 되바나나 예카송스네 대양 균도 셈네 남몽라 윤진 뒤소 내시 된제징 아네 제젠 강바 라바 체바라 탕가 멘덴 바이
Now, turning to the text, on the published book, it's page 23. The handout, it's a similar page number. So we, on the outline, perceiving persistent practice as the cure. So continuing where we completed last week, which is with a quotation from praise of confession. Our minds have utterly and continually been obscured, and for long we have perpetuated the disease. How can a leper whose hands and feet are falling off derive any benefit from only rarely taking his medicine?
뉴스 내시 된지 진세도 당한 저기 샘디 코 토마 메바네 녀모베기 원도 송제다 녀모 되샤샤다 공저 녀모바도 숨기 도스네 아니 지게 유래계시네 니게네 지게 몽네 유기 몽바 마리바디 기엔제네 유기 내수지다 와시는 마셰바제 도스네 아니 유윤리도 내시 된지시스네 데네게 코 토마 메바네 다데 바르동 안스길라 데네기 녀몽 제네 녀모바 세미나라 녀모 독숨도 도시는 균링부 제네 내일마서는 데네기디 된제다데 봐도 요요레서 올라 니 여바자 니기 기엔젠다 안줄야 지게 동아 망고 용고래 사지 내가 동아 안델레 디기 레앙아 바사 디티부 동아 요하다 안디 용고래 사지.
So look at the first line. Our minds have utterly and continually been obscured. This then draws our mind to an important point, that since beginningless time, we have been obscured, our mind has been obscured by the afflictions, primarily that of ignorance, which obscures us from perceiving reality, and from that all the other afflictions, such as anger and attachment, arise. So recognizing we need to recognize that this has been our lived experience for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And therefore, we are deeply habituated to misperceiving reality. And this has been the case for many lifetimes. It is the case right now as well. And this continues with the second line. And for long we have perpetuated the disease being that of the afflictions, primarily that of ignorance, which have afflicted our very perception of reality.
멘디바이 지기르치스도 당한 저게 내가 제네 세디어와 제네 강바다라 마차제 강발라바 체네 데네기 마차샤 내스 중국어와 데네기 체베 내가 될야 멘 제디 탕가 템바 지기페 탕가 선에 갑갑려야 돼 무디지 멘메데바체 가브리엘야 멘 땡샤샤반 만 같이 살아가지 템바이 셈기 and Nedi Tatu Mariella or Chisa, Nedi Mendil Mutu Chine, and the Mutini Tingu Mato, Tangala and Nega brings at Kugur, Chisa, Nega Mentemba, and Mutu Matembana, Nazi Tatu Mudua, Chisa Nazi the Tayala, Mutu Tingu was or in Tingures, Betty Sharwa, that Betty Shade and Donda Hala was a Manazuki. That it Zene Nashin Nazadi, Numo Dusumdi, says a Numo Dusumdi, Meva Sola, and the other Cabri Cabria, Comraja, Cabri Cabra Chick, Kijur Dubazim, Dizamiko, Mes Meva two Mares, says a Mutu and a Tunduji, Mutu Genako, Zimbal Mason, Korongi, Yamling Rimbat, Bang Dija, Kona Matuba, and the Macheva, Malav, Denigin, Yawachin Yamlin Jawar, Dijavana, and they got. Meva Kasore, Yomotu Sunipa, Tugre, Sesungorwa.
The first two lines are then illustrated in the second two lines. How can a leper whose hands and feet are falling off derive any benefit from one rarely taking his medicine? So the illustration is quite clear that if someone is afflicted by a severe illness such as leprosy or Hansen's disease, they need to, one, seek out treatment from a skilled physician, and then having been well diagnosed, follow the medical treatment prescribed. Follow it precisely and continuously. If they only, every now and again, remember to apply the medicine, no surprise, they will not heal. So the meaning of this illustration is that we are similar to a leper in that we are also afflicted by illness, in particular, whilst not from leprosy, but from the three poisons, ignorance, anger, and attachment. And as these have been afflicting our mind since beginningless times, lifetime after lifetime, we are deeply habituated to them. Therefore, to the extent we recognize how deeply habituated we are to these afflictions, we come to recognize that occasional application of the antidotes or applying of the Dharma will not have much impact. Occasional attempts are insufficient. We need to consistently apply the Dharma to our mind, consistently and vigorously, in order to bring about the radical transformation that we long for.
Nyamlen Mutin Chekores, Dineza Dedana, Sendin Chekovenzada, Dedana, Rala never tabu Dushi Shinduka Chetes. De Yena, Shenam Ya Junla. De Sixam no Sona, Nyomoba, Sona, Nyomoba, Sevi Chidu, Dambigi, Duen Mijubaras, Nyamba Sam Shitu, Gurwe, Member Zene, Men Mutunwar, Men Jurwa, Kona Lulangne. Nebi Nele Mitavata and Tower Dingizin Jebole Sonshings.
Coming to the paragraph beneath the quotation. The perception of oneself as a patient is key. If it is present, the other perceptions will also arise. However, if the instructions remain mere words, without their meaning being accomplished so as to eliminate the mental afflictions, you will remain a mere listener. The King of Concentration Sutra says that you will be like a patient who is not cured, but having sought a doctor, seeks out only the medical treatise and does not take the medicine.
Rangla neba tabi dushe sati pe masi kechimbu shushiri esti shindu rangla neba tabi dushe di shindu kachewa res. Di kachimbu res, di yaku chungba ina, di yuena shenam chungla sidi, zizada rangi neba tabi dushe di yaku chungna, chue tunba pali menba tabi dushe dan, chue sunbe tamga dili men tabi dushe, di nende nyamso lambala dini nesu dushe digi ku yunguri hes, warda yunguri hes, zizada disu yung koran juwe le yunguri hes, zizada tangbo nga zhugla neba tabi dushe kiye di kechimbu shuguri hes.
As it says in the first two sentences here, that the first of the six perceptions, recognizing that oneself is a patient, this is crucial, because to the extent that one recognizes that one is afflicted, One will seek out a doctor and seek out the prescription and apply it. And to the extent that one recognizes that one is ill, one will apply the treatment, the Dharma, with vigor. So this first step of recognizing that oneself as a patient is crucial.
Nyomo dusum digi ngale ya kanga chigore dingi digi da nyomo dusum digi kanga chigore sempegeda chisan kanga chigore chitadi cedele ina dade nyomo ngara gyulo rangi gyulo nyomo dusum yoba digi cedele ina makibo soya nyomo dusum digi wangi anjige lianga basa jen kewa chima ina ya anjige dunganyo ya gyutite ya nitebu dunganyo ya nyomo dusum wange rang makiyo shala makibo soya chasanada nyomo dusum jigido nyomo dusum di negi nyomo dusum de ne di pa dele de 직대니 되게 강한 레시아 당한줄이야 아신니가 강한 되게인데 nyomo dusum de redwa sanpege das diago hago gores or dangajere never imba never tabi dushi shindu ka di gechim shures diago hago wana an karson di gedina dadi gyenji shu 통어도 안 그래 삼그레스는 디 매바서에게 삼노데 라신 리기로 하다 고 gyen지 통어도 gyen이 매바서에게 삼노데 리고 제자다 디 지기 대기 세게 답람 안 술둘랍나 되니 최시겐데 바냐다 안 최시 소야디 된다디 냠슬렘바디 용고레스 제산디 마주게다 nyomo dusum die nga zo le kanga tigyo ba de nga zuge shara samno kogo mara dumyu nang mer wada 지금 di 직 kanga yungu도 사드 마도 가리게 진 용구요 ba de nga 세바 하고 고 mara 제가 되니 엔자 nyomo dusum di게 랑야 kanga de 나자 땅한디 nyomo dusum le 제가 내갑다 라나 셴 니가 너바 지겐디 다 nyomo dusum 레도 와 산베게다 디 네바 데비디 디 삼고야디 제심부 쇼레에서
As the text clearly states here, that the perception of oneself as a patient is key. So this point needs to really be emphasized, be hammered home by ourselves. We need to recognize that the three poisons continuously torment us. And it's these three poisons that bind us into these suffering realms of samsara. And that isn't just something that is the case right now, or for as long as we can remember, but it was in our previous life, our life previous to that, and previous to that, throughout beginningless time. It's our own afflictions that have been causing us all our pain and torment. And under the influence of these afflictions, we create the causes that sort of strengthen our binds in the suffering realms of samsara. And moreover, when we express these afflictions through our physical behavior or way of speaking, we also, all too often bring added harm and pain into the lives of others. So the role of our afflictions, or the extent of our illness, this we have to recognize for ourselves. Because to the extent that we recognize that the cause of our pain and our misery is within us, and it is continuously within us, we will seek out a skilled doctor because we want treatment. Wanting treatment, then, we will apply it when it is prescribed. This is what we need to, where we need to get to. And we can, to the extent that we have recognized this, we will already be applying the medicine. To the extent we haven't, we will still be looking to blame outer circumstances for our own pain and misery.
Dina shen penanga zege anzul sosule nazi yoba da hagona dine nazi de sege tablam tabji dinghe di member zega ruwa de member ge zene de men jebane di mendi musage besi tangirwa jesa ne tae tablam ruwa jina dina shen resen da sosuge da ngazo ne yoba da ha mogo baine ne nazi me samde baina and member thing I do go mar member thing marana then men I mar men sago mar mesene nedi anjema anjike nedi cheta me cha do go wa dina is chesa dine sa nyomo du sum yo sosolya kanga tigi yo ba kanga nga zule kanga yungu yo ba nyomo chi dunga yu gyuzo de da nyomo du su yimba da ha go go reso da na ningbo de di ha go na da di se ge 하고나 하 디세게 탑람도 제이레스 제산디고 수시 송구도 탑람 수시 송구도 개외신이 라마 땡용을 제산데 멤버다보데 라신이 레용도 실리래 제산데 멤버들이 대면대디 멘다보데 라미게 담가 소디 디디제고 소노도 디니 마 담가디 라용을 담가라도 디니 고냠슬리네 nen데 men지 nen데 냠슬리아 바데 레용도 와스 제산디네 자데 디 소수규라 녀모 두스미 나라주 둥아 용주 유 녀모 두스미 바데 맞아 하고 고야다 나라주규라 디기 강아 제기도 선바 디 하고 고야데 기에치 머시버레스 두시에세다 나라주리 네규라 녀모 두스미 디기 뉴고라 디 다데 녀모 두스미 디기 나도 요레 선베게 삼로디 니 나줄리 기디나 삼로디 유고 고레스 다디가 기에치 머레세데 디레
If we think of someone whose body inside is riddled with illness and disease, but they perhaps have no idea, they haven't yet even noticed the effects of the disease abiding within, or if they have, they think, well, that's just normal, or they think there's nothing that can be done about it, and they go about their life. They will not be seeking medical treatment, because they either haven't recognized they are ill, or they just think, well, that's how it is. Whereas a person in the same situation, who has come to recognize that they're ill, and they also know that there is something that can be done about it, they will seek out a medical professional, and with joy they will receive their prescription and will apply it. So between those two, we can see which is the more skilled person, who is in the better circumstance. One has hope. The other's situation is pitiful. So in our case, to the extent that we recognize that we are ill, we are afflicted by these three poisons of anger, attachment, and ignorance, to the extent that we recognize this, we will seek out teachings and receive these spiritual instructions with joy and eagerness, because we yearn to transform our mind, and knowing that we have the capacity to gain freedom from this pain. We will with joy receive the spiritual instructions, and with eagerness we will apply them. So therefore it's important that we need to be aware that we are patients, that these three poisons afflict us at all, and be aware of this at all times, so that we have as our focus of our attention the eradication of our own afflictions, rather than trying to change the outer world.
Dene that is what the energy sang jumden digi denshi cheo sombi kabline chongor dangbo songdo dunga shebar cha se sosule na se di dunga de hago wache chiza dunga hawo de di gyudi she gore ane kunju shebar cha se chiza dunga yu khale ju nyomo ba de kare yong ba de gyudi hago wache gores di hago na ane di bangko sembe samlo gigres di ge de gom lam nyam ning che gore sa di na shin sung ji ba de ta so de gar so re in rala neba de bi du she ga chen bo re se de jeza rang gi gyu la nyomo du sum gi ne nyomo du sum ji gi gang a ji gi ba de ha go gores jeza nyomo du sum ha go de jeza nga zo gang a yo ya gyu cha zo nyomo du sum ha go yo de an di me ba zo tablan le be zo che go re sa chi de so cha san ko da na ro ma so ji ba che go do wa.
Another way that this is commonly expressed is to refer to Buddha Shakyamuni's first teaching on the Four Noble Truths, where he taught that the truth of suffering needs to be known. One needs to recognize that we are suffering, and the extent of it, not just the coarse levels, but the subtler levels too. And to the extent that we recognize suffering, naturally our mind will turn to the second noble truth, that of the origin. What is the cause? Why do we suffer like this? Why do these unwanted circumstances keep befalling us? And there we come to recognize it is these afflictions, these three poisons, anger, attachment, ignorance, that cause us all our pain. They are the origin of all our suffering. And the Buddha taught that the origins need to be abandoned, and that there can be cessation is possible, And this needs to be cultivated. It needs to be attained. And how so? Through cultivating the path. The fourth noble truth. So to the extent that one recognizes that the origin of our suffering is these afflictions, we will apply ourselves to the path. To the extent, and there is a clear dependency here, the strength that we recognize that the afflictions cause all our pain and misery. To that extent, we'll readily apply ourselves to cultivating the paths in our mind, the Lamrim in our mind.
The exam no son is Yomo by Savi Chirdu and Dambigi doing Mijubaras. The exam no son in Yomo by Savi Chirdu, Dambi doing Mijuba. The Divalo Sarva, the Mijula said that to a exam no son is so. Jezadang Jigi, Sun Chiki Lamigi, Damga Shuba, the Sik Pat Chune, and Yamso Malabaina. Sik Tuba the Mado and then Yomoba and Jiggy never suit to my lesson, Yomoba Savi Chidu and Ma Lamigi Damga Manganju Suyadi, Yomoba, never Suke, Dundala, Dundala Sungo, Damga somebody. Chazan Dipa Chik to Tuja, Dundala Gom, Magombaina, Yamsumalabaina, and then Yomoba Savi to somebody, Dunda Mijutu or Dunda Tata Chago Mares, Dunda the Trup to go Mares, 6 of the Sony, Yomoba Savi Chirdu, 6 of the Sony, Song Nasida, Naji, Panye, Chick the Tubache, Dun Gomba, Gombe, Yamla Majabaina, and Yomoba Savi Chirson, Dunda Matuba, Dunda to go Mar, Yomoba Pantu Mares, Dunda. Then be the Mijuba said. The
paragraph continues. However, if the instructions remain mere words without their meaning being accomplished so as to eliminate the mental afflictions, you will remain a mere listener. So this we need to take to heart. Because it's imperative to hear teachings so that we can come to recognize the pervasiveness of suffering that we experience, coarse and subtle levels, and recognize the origin of the suffering and learn what we can do about that. So hearing is imperative. However, here we are being warned that if we merely hear that the teaching occasion is seen more as just an event where information is imparted and received, then the instructions will remain mere words without their meaning being accomplished. And the meaning is, of course, to eliminate our suffering, the mental afflictions. The purpose, the reason people seek out the teachings, the reason everyone sits in a teaching environment or reads a Dharma text is because they want freedom from suffering. So the purpose of receiving teachings is to transform one's mind and gain freedom from suffering. This is the same purpose behind which the teachings are given, or what the motivation is for the giving of teachings, which is the elimination of suffering. So therefore, it's imperative one doesn't leave this reception of information as mere information, but rather also applies it, integrates it to our very way of thinking.
Nyamba zamdo curious, Nyamba zamshi curious, it is a church, Nyamba zamchi, Nyam Mago, Nyam Majabaina, Lalim Matabaina, Chedi Tubas, Nyambas and Tubas Mado, and Lalim Matabaina, and Digi, and another Yomo, but say to go Mades. This is Matabaina, and Jike, Lamigi, Ma, Sunyegu, Dunda, Miu Source, and another Yomo, but say Dunda Sungore, Di, Dunda did not to go Mades to Sungore.
So here we be encouraged not to remain a mere listener, but to actually put the Dharma into practice. In other words, to cultivate it in our mind. So to repeat from the previous segment, it's in order we receive these teachings in order to eliminate our afflictions. That's why one receives spiritual instructions. And likewise, the spiritual instructions are given so as to enable the students to eradicate their afflictions. So they are given and received with the same motivation, the same purpose. So therefore, fulfill that purpose. Don't waste this opportunity. Don't remain a mere listener.
Member say never get on as never say never if a member says that member say mean between wars, men joa corner hulana, and never nearly mitabada, Java, anything is in Yebola Sonshin says.
Then the King of Concentration Sutras presents the same meaning through an illustration. You will be like a patient who is not cured, but having sought a doctor, seeks out only the medical treatise and does not take the medicine.
That never the member that you pass the member Kawayaga to see what pass and the member the men take the men the Masawashi Tata Mazayaj member Shanda didn't say in Duven, men Joe corner Hulang, but a member. Men rag deep can chebar mother, men the Tatas had because Majivales, Chesati Majivas, men Tata Mazudu, near Tatugo Marriage, Chesatini Zada, Kishushida Karelamna, and the men biggie, men take over the Chikanasa, Soma Nashin, Sheva Nashin, that Nandinchi, the Nyamsulian over the kitchen board, Dichena, near the Tagidu was. Dinashin, respect Dinashin, as you motusum, Meva Soya Tandala, and Duma Saya Tandala, and the Chushukin Chimang Shuja, Magumbana, and the Kasorum. Nyamle Majabaina, and the Nyamotusum Patu Mare, Chesa Nyamle Chewa, the kitchen more such, Donadisumore.
Seeing this illustration, there's no one who would say that, oh, this is a very wise patient who didn't follow the advice they were given, but merely just took the medical treatise and did nothing with it. So we should learn from this, apply it to ourselves, see that it's how important it is to recognize the role that the afflictions play, afflicting, tormenting our mind, distorting our mind. And to the extent we recognize this, we will then readily apply ourselves to the treatment. We'll put the Dharma teachings we receive into practice. We'll meditate on them repeatedly over time. And in this way, we will change. In this way, we will heal.
And Delia, Chisamno, and Chikoner Tegi, Chikyachi Umrua, person. Oda dene töber mangu chöre mangu shune ngi gomni chera jap tu min da gomja madan da chöshin kaze shune de pando yosa mar de yosa marwa sambegi dene chöshuwa minwa sambe samna pando mena dene jige shuwa minwa sambegi samlo yonsi gwa Gyoba Kigoma Chesade Tisigama, Shuji, Gomjab 2 minutes, so Gomja, Jab 2 Meva in the nature, Gomjab 2 minutes, and the Pijnala, Gomajabna, Treva some year and Pando Yomar Sunduas, Chesnadin Zadana, Gomja 2 minutes, the nature, the Pandos Minuas, then you were Minus and Besam Leonsi watching.
So here it's possible that one may see this, and a misunderstanding may arise. One may think, I can't meditate. Meditation is something I find really difficult. So perhaps for me then, receiving teachings, I should rather not even bother receiving teachings, because it says here, I need to receive teachings and meditate on what I'm receiving. But if I find meditation too difficult, then, well, let me just give up on the whole thing and not even bother with the teachings.
지난디네 자 언도스네 지난디 고마 gem다 뒤쳐봐도 년바 좀더 유리스 사지 손야디 녀모 봤어요 두고 말해야지 donala 가르송고르스네 퇴바체디레 지게 판도요 말에서 숨고 말에 지난 퇴바체는 녀모버 빵바라 퇴비 된디 냠슬리노 공부에도 계침부래 세대가 낸데지도 숨고 얼마도 퇴바디 고 공gem마도나 퇴바디레 야 판도요 말에 세비디 숨고 말에.
So ideally what we are meant, not even ideally, what we are supposed to do is meditate on what we are hearing. But that doesn't mean that there is no benefit to only hearing, because there will be times where one only hears but is not able to meditate on what one has heard. So certainly it doesn't mean that if one cannot meditate on something, there's no need to hear teachings on it or study it.
로 나신 소리 지산 퇴고고라 남 고마 yenye라 퇴고고라 퇴바디 계침부 휴신 신예망아주 퇴바디 계침부 유송 이마고 휴서라 지산 퇴바 계침부레 지산다 곰gem마토는 퇴바디 단 퇴바지나 판도여서 말했으면 매래 지산다 퇴내는 고 곰갸리기 마도 마토는 곰갸리기 말아 지산 퇴바디 계침부레 지산 퇴내당 아주 곰갸디 계침부레 송마도 다 퇴바 점 곰gem마토는 판도여 말했어야지 송마 지산 판도한테 그 퇴바이나 안디 내사리 수수 내가 곰잡 tum나 마트나 곰잡타다 가르가르 차사데 신고로와 제신나 되는 고합라는 고합라는 곰자야리야 내라 용고로와 제산 내로 차기로와 제산 퇴바디 배마세 판도 신보다 배주 신보 유여바래 마세야는 어느 쪽이 퇴비 바차샤야다 소수기 퇴비 된데라 삼다 유여바 제산디 내내기 아니 고합레도 있고 곰야고 고합여바 곰초야 곰초수여바디다 퇴바제 퇴비 된데라 삼바디도 고고로와 제사다 곰gem마투베네 내가 곰gem마투베네 퇴야디 퇴바디 배마세 기치모 차고로와.
Earlier in this chapter, we looked extensively at the benefits of hearing and recalled that the word hearing, as it is in the book, it can be translated as listening, can also mean studying. So the same word we can understand as hearing, listening, and studying. So here, we need to be clear that what is being said here is precisely the correct meaning. That one has to receive teachings, receive spiritual instructions, and meditate on them. That is how I meditate on them with vigor and extensively over a protracted period. That is how transformation will come. That being said, though, in order to meditate, one has to have heard extensively. So therefore, if one tries to meditate without having studied, one's meditation will not bring much result. So even if a particular topic is something that one is not putting into meditation practice right now, one still should study it or hear teachings on it, because by doing so, one will come to understand it better, and thereby the wish to overcome the obstacles that prevent one from meditating on it will arise, and thereby one will do so. So therefore, it's through meditation that the mind is transformed. But for one to be able to meditate successfully, one needs to have heard or listened or studied previously. So therefore, ideally, these two should be done together, hearing and meditating. But for some subjects, one will need to hear or study extensively before one is able to put it into meditation practice.
저기 동리아 교연 가르가르여 받은 두신데 하고 뭐도와 통면도와 제가 된데 토야라 멜론치 고고래서 저도 된데 멜론치 따베네 멜론들이야 저기 동라디고아디 교연 가르가르여 메다 차상 통고래서 제자디 통어도 인디 메바서야 양아저 탑시 비지데 어델레 교연도 디 메바서도 디 야고서 선비디 용구로와 제가 멜론래서 동라 따야기 교연 가르가서 멜론한테 통고래서 어디 나시 가서 샘 나로야 가서 샘로 나로야 샘로 야가 가르치기도 샘로 교연샤데 가르고도 제선 샘로 마디바 가르치 디바 가르샤 샘로 데니스타나 가니스타나 디기두고 샘미 가니스타나 둥을 두고 용고래서야지 퇴바디 베지 퇴바디를 되는 거래서 퇴바디 저기 멜로나 삼로 나노기 괜다 윤된디기 봐 샤야 하고 얘기 멜로나시디 아주 퇴바제 베지 퇴바제 되레스 베지디 퇴바제 되레스 퇴용도 퇴바디를 되네 베지디 퇴용도 퇴바디가 아니 되샤께나 디지지 연구래 코르게네 디 연구래 지지 연구래 해서다 라지니가 강아디 연구를 해야 되는 수시서 되셔야 되는 시로 콘로서 되는 시라고 해서 마시 다데네 잠바다 제와다 니제다 안지기 예쇼 공부하는 디 삼로 되는 산스 담다는 제부 되는 연구를 해서 세상 퇴발라든 하고 저 퇴바딩 아주기 삼로 난기 괜다 연된디 파 하고 해야지 퇴비기 빼제 단에 퇴바들 연구를 해서
In the same way that we rely on a mirror to tell if our hair is a mess or not, or our face is dirty or not, we need to rely on the mirror of the Dharma, the mirror that comes through hearing teachings, to understand our own mind, to understand whether our mind is in the direction of virtue or non-virtue, whether our mind is tending towards the wholesome or the unwholesome. Without the mirror of the Dharma, which comes through hearing, we will just, like most people, go through life unaware of this rich inner world. So, for example, it is through hearing or listening or studying that one comes to understand with vivid clarity the faults of anger and attachment, how they arise, and the harm that they bring to oneself in this life, past lives, future lives, and through our expression of these afflictions, the harm we bring to others. Similarly, it's through hearing or listening or studying that we come to recognize what wholesome minds are, such as love and compassion, that what their benefits are, how to develop them, and so forth. So all of this only comes to be known through extensive hearing.
안디네 자다데 당한 저기 다데 아 저기 네바다보 뒤시 소소기디 있나 녀모 두숨쟁아 나들 녀모 두숨에 강아 지기 디메바스고 선배 삼로시단 거를 세계시 모레서 다데 녀모 두숨 맨 나신데 가래랍니다 지당은 원마 제마 쉬야레데 이내다 너 된다랑 뒤로와 배낭아 저기 지게 류가 있으니 예제도 수름소야 되게 수rim소야되게 맨 나신지 맨루디 다시 뒤로 링어스 예주되면 수rim소야 진배 냠내자 쇠배 냠내자 안에 저기 잠니죠 거면 안에 띵해져 거면 안에 다음에 봐도 왜 싫어 거면 돼서 대맨 디디래다디 돼서 맨디 맨디로 와다 제사당하는 저기 라미ing 아주 가르 담가 제대 가르 숨고라서는 지와 미다고 공고래 안에 잠도 채고래 당연히 람림 나디로다 치와미다고 고미하다 잠로셔야다 레균데 디법봉 개와두고래 해야다 이 두고래 되네 코와야 니메다 타로 톱고래스비 삼로디 장고래 해야다 안디 안디야 안디 장에데 수름소야다 진배년에 쇠바도 준비 삼대 띵이진디게 다음에 봐도 베시라디 요공고래 해야다 안데 되네 녀모 바샤다 제가 방할지도 안 잠니죠 공고래 장주심 공고래 세대 장주심이 심비토네다 파신주디 냠네 제고래서 돼. 대면이 뒤로와다 니 냠네 제고래 송고로다. 세상 니 송하나 생하나 저기다 아 저기 두치네. 대수 봐 라란데도 고메디 대수 베지 라란데도 냠슬레데 대수레서 고르다. 대수 냠슬렘 바이나 당아 저기 지기 미디게 안에 줍투고래 해제 디기 줍투고래 해제.
So if we've seen in this paragraph that it's crucial that we recognize that we are ill, that our mind is afflicted. To the extent we recognize that, we will seek out a skilled practitioner and want to be desperate to receive the medical treatment, to apply the medical treatment that's prescribed. So what is the medical treatment that is prescribed? Well, these you've heard many times in the past, but in brief, the spiritual instructions you'll receive from the doctor, from the teacher, will be first discussion about the impermanence of this life. Then turning our mind towards refuge in the three jewels, looking at cause and effect, the need to accumulate virtue and purify past non-virtue, to come to understand the suffering nature of samsara in its entirety, both the suffering as well as its causes, and then thereby to recognize that this can be brought to an end. How so? To cultivating the path. And here, definite emergence will arise, the determination to emerge from these suffering realms of samsara. And thereby, one engages in the trainings on ethical restraint, in particular ethical restraint of restraining one's body, speech, and mind, as well as generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration, and the wisdom realizing selflessness. Thereafter, further spiritual instructions are given on how to cultivate love and compassion and bodhicitta. So all of these are the medicine that is prescribed in the spiritual teachings by our teachers. This is what we are to put into practice. The meaning of Buddhist practice is taking all of these and cultivating them in our mind, cultivating the mind's realizing impermanence, refuge, cause and effect, and so forth, cultivating these within. This is what the practice we need to engage in.
Andi nangazuki men haji nyam lale dedige da disure chesa dini zatangazuki lamrim chembo lana da lamrim dings na da ngazu nyamne she de da dangazu kozu won ma she chesa diran digor she ro da gewu chungwe lam yirim ba ko se de jige mitaba da anjige digor le yunde dan jamdo ko she ro gewu dingile de ane jige 코와라 예준기에 코르비 동아지는 코르비 예준기에다 예준 탈바토야기 탑람다 탈바고 톱지게 람고미야디 숨고래 다데네 타바침비기 기부 챔비어 람지리 바시에도 안잠니제 거소래 많이 나눠주게 마시에 딘데 딘소 이완 잠바 나 하산남다 세다 거소래 마시에 딘딘 딘소 이완 니지 챔보 잠바데 니 챔바데 하산남다 자슈 셈곰 데네 마즈 진비 팔 진바다 수르서 파지두게 냠네들이 바진 다시라게 파지 냠네이 림바 마시드는 바 조사로 와드네 근데 마드시에 뭐라
And in fact, what I've just mentioned there, all the trainings to engage in, is the subject matter of our text here, the Middle Lamrim, and it is the subject matter of its the larger companion, the Great Lamrim. So the text is divided into the trainings which are, firstly, into the trainings which are shared with a practitioner of initial capacity. So these include impermanence of this life, refuge, cause and effect. And then comes the second section, which is the trainings that are shared with a practitioner of intermediate capacity. So these include coming to recognize the sufferings of the various realms of samsara, as well as the origins behind the sufferings, and all to lead towards the development of the mind of definite emergence, where one is definite about the need to emerge from these suffering realms of samsara. And then one comes to the third section, the trainings that are unique to a practitioner of greatest capacity. So these trainings all build one on top of the other. And the unique trainings of a practitioner of great capacity start with impartiality, recognizing our close and intimate relationship with all beings, the kindness that they have shown us in our direct and indirect relationships, developing thereby the wish to repay that kindness. And how to do so? We cultivate love, compassion, eventually the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility and bodhicitta. With bodhicitta generated, one then engages in the six perfections of generosity, ethical restraint, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration, and the wisdom realizing emptiness. So that, in brief, is the major outlines of our entire text, what lies before us.
Den madua dere yang derasa ngeni rabdu sambo chue she kyang kyugi tuyne yangda maje na neba mengi jeba tokwa dak dagi neni sowar minushin shedang sadi.
This is then presented in another quotation from the same text. If after I have explained the excellent Dharma and you have heard it, you do not apply it well, you'll be like those patients whose pouches are full of medicine, but who still do not cure their own diseases.
ane dungal dragi tablamna dingi dewa dhubya tablam lam nyamli rimba ane pechi mano matuba sangpo yakbu chik ane chwe ya sem koryo dunga tada dingi dewa tobya tarbada tamche kimi kubadu tablam ki lam nyamli chwe pa shiyores dine shiyeba inayang ane kyong zuki tuye che nyamsu lengu kore nyamsu lena ane tarba tamche kubadu tugures 냠수 말렘 바제 안에 두스 퇴제 퇴바점이 전에 지바 제제 안에 냠수 말렘 바샤바이나 안에 지나 퇴바데 약고래데 게 소다 안에 쓰는 약고 사고리네 냠수 말라바이나 뇨모바 빵 두고 말해서 그러다 쾌기 퇴네 냠수 야다 마제나 세도 제사 두스 마제바이나 안에 코발로 저 두고 말해 안달바다 탐지기 보고 원톱 두고 말해서
This is sutra quotation. So when it says in the first line, after I, so this refers to after Buddha Shakyamuni has explained the excellent Dharma and you have heard it. So here, the Buddha is saying to us that after I have explained the complete and unmistaken trainings, all of which you have now heard, and you understand how to cultivate them, and they are all within your capacity to cultivate them, that means that you have within the palm of your hands the very real possibility of attaining liberation. You can do this now. You have the information, you have the capacity. But if you do not apply it well, liberation will not be achieved.
내내 디냐 지금 베로스 마산 베들라 네바 먼지 개바 토바다 다기 내도 소얼 미디시스 제가 네바 되게 맨지 개바 토바다스 맨 망부지냐 되베나 시월다 맨지 개바세데 데 개바세데 맨루스로 시고다 디니기 맨지 개바 토바다스 맨 망부지냐 제 마사바이네 내를 자투 말해서 다기 내니 소월 미니시 제가 맨 멤버 망보티 맨 망보 담nye 얘는 마사 샤샤바나 아니면 내랑기 되니게 강사 내가 강사 되다 다기 내 강사 되다기 내가 강사 되다기 내 소투만 내를 자투 말로 와서 베디나시리에서 오다.
And then those first two lines are explained in the illustration. You will be like those patients whose pouches are full of medicine, but who still do not cure their own diseases. Here, we would look at such a person as foolish. They've been given the ideal medicine that will heal them from their disease, and you know it will work because it's worked for so many people before. They also know it works because they have confidence in the doctor who prescribed it. But yet, they don't take the medicine out of the bag and eat it. And therefore they cannot heal. So that is the position we should not find ourselves in.
jamdra samdai baina susugeda je deshi shebana susu neba susugeda nyomo dusum di da ko dunga chasa rasen chama kanga nyoadi nyomo dusum de yungore chasa susugila decha da khondro nyomo ba yore digi kenje na susle yungore sheya ne shesimje janda digina nyomo dusum mabang ba inza no corner say, or a diggy and Kenjin and chick, no more by Geshe, Makiba Chaya, the Dunganyoya, the Lianga Basai, the Dunguru watches, Dine Zada, Dine what is a Dunganyoya, the Korea Dunga said the Dunga de Dine Jungur, just a Dunga de the Targu, what and Targu water, just not the Tayadu. Gobi Nuba the Suru Yores and the Jamia Conscious Yores and Begeda, those chin some danger, Jamia Korea Dunga, Tadale, Gobi Nuba, Jamia Conscious Yores, and Jamra Samta, Dele, Yore, Chesa, Jamia Conscious Gobure, Sambegi, Ichiche, to Gobure, Sambe, Dine, some danger to Comiadi, that got your Korea Gunji, da. Did Gun Tag, say, Nuba the Suru, Jamia Conscious Yores, and then Conscious Yendenji da. Yundesta, then Yundesta, Dini sometime, that Dini Kubi consciously Kubri, Sempig, Sem, each in a comedida, Yanjin Jamdo Comba, setting us to that, Lalande or Comje, Chikti, Dine to Sinishi, sometime, the Comba set Chichagorova, the Sulalanterwa, and Dinajin Dana, let me get on to Labja, Karaja wars, Chesang around to get the Ludi. Dengan tenjugi milu rimbu chesat be yakure chesan dati ten delaya chiki yende da nyamnen karachina druptuye ki ten chabarchin yore sambege denigi sungwa lamige sungwa nashin sosuina sam danje ngaje da luiten dele ten gari drube na kom garashkana chaptuye ten chabarchin re delaya da gewachima milu chik lada miu goban hoji drube na ten dele druptu gore tarba de toba je goban drube na ten delaya Ludin deletin and to gore, Sanjo Gomanduina, Ludin deletin and to gore, the Ludin Embassy, Tachimo, Resha, Tangana, Dene, but Bay, Resha, Sambico, Soso, Kawakomiada, Duches, Kawakom, Dene, Dendela, Chusio Maton, Dendelia, Lam Yamling Rimbating, that in the part, Duchin, Gomgi in Simicatio, Tibak, Spine, the Kewak, saw to the Sagi in Sambiki, Duchin, some down. Denegi, Masavan, Dendi, Mitaba was, Chesango Ji to gore, Chesang that the Yoba Yaboti, Beji Yabochi Tamadovena, and I call children, Meba Chasona, Maobana, Denigi, Rag, that the Yabomajan Rakabu was and big. Denigi some Davana, then you Ludin Chimbo Zachim or something. Denigi de Mitapa in some Davana, then Yamlinch the Rimbachik, Tisungo, Disupanga to do some die the Yechimo Chagorwa.
So the way that we should start to utilize this opportunity well is, we've heard that meditation based on what we've heard or what the teachings we received is crucial. So here then I encourage you to start by recognizing the role that the afflictions play in your life, recognizing that it is because our mind is afflicted, because our mind is deluded, that we suffer. Recognize that it's because we misperceive reality that attachment arises, that anger arises, and that this has been the case throughout our life, and in fact since beginningless time. This is why I suffer. This is why those around me suffer. This is why those that I see acting in such obviously destructive ways, why they are doing so. Their mind has been obscured by their afflictions, as is mine. This is why I am suffering and will continue to do so. We need to recognize that what binds us in this process of uncontrolled rebirth, falling for always with the potential danger of falling to the lower realms, what binds us into this situation is our own afflictions. Then when this recognition arises within us in a powerful way, turn your mind to the three jewels. So here the practice is called going for refuge. So this word refuge is better understood as protection. So we turn our mind to the three jewels, recognizing that they have the capacity to guide us, to attain or develop within us a state where we are freed of suffering and thereby gain protection from suffering through their guidance. So going for refuge means going to the three jewels for guidance to attain protection, to attain protection from suffering. And to the extent that we trust that the three jewels have the capacity to guide us in this way, to that extent that we have the mind going for refuge, the mind seeking to cultivate our inner protection. Thereafter, so that's the second meditation, or the second step in the meditation. The third then is to recognize our own incredible capacity. We all have attained a precious human rebirth, which is marked by many freedoms and endowments, including this remarkable human intelligence. So with this incredible capacity, we can do so much. We can do so much more than what we perceive in our everyday life. We can do something that is actually beyond our own imagination, in that through applying these teachings, all of which are within our capacity, we can attain a state of peace that we have never experienced. Lasting, stable peace of mind. The bliss of liberation, the bliss of enlightenment. This we can achieve. It is within our capacity. Recognizing this then, in the third step of the meditation, a joy will arise, a joy in our potential. And accompanying this joy, or rather following this joy, is a confidence in what we can do. And this inner confidence is of great importance, because it will give us the strength of mind to turn away from distractions that we are so habituated to, and rather focus on what's important. But to add to this, to add strength to this, we then reflect on impermanence of this life, this impermanence of this opportunity, and that we cannot delay, we cannot procrastinate. We need to apply ourselves now.
Tarba tamji kimbe ko mato se de jugi that kunjo sum se sanje kunjo chepten babares 지난 기능 고쳐대 접두게 다로레스 최 고쳐대 접무에레스 최 고쳐대 가는 길에 기어도 너 코발에 타야 다디 뭐줘야디 디 원에디 리고로 와체 최 고쳐 지난데 최 고쳐래야 디 가는 주게다 타르바세네 아 주게 셈 코롱 지다 셈 코롱 자위게 라신 코롱 녀모버견 탐제된 자바레스 세 균메 균에 막어봐 라신 상계를 차되어래지 라신 상계다 아주 셈게 라신이들라 차버려 말레스 셈게 라신이라 이내다 상계게 셈데 라신 녀모버 아주게 다 가려 셈게 라신다 균 탐제게 막어봐 레데 아주게 셈 코롤이야 로버기 디마 로버견 로버기 디미게 파 둠제되어래스 제사단 장마장인 바들라 아니 지금 로버기 디마 쪽바 차당 고여신 뜸니 되게 말해서 제사 되니 로버기 디마 되게 파 세고 그래 니 매봐서 그래 니 매봐 장마서 사서나 매봐서 사서나 아니 셈디 지금 파 랑신 세부디 내용 통고로 봐 다당 아주 랑신 등고 균 함제 마고 바디 이나야 로버기 디미 파 디마 당 코로나 당고에다 사번나 바샤 차자 이 둠제네고 통해 매봐서 되게 지제다 통수제도 와데 데니지어로 봐 통해 매봐서 돼 지난 디기다 둠제교디 균 로버와디 파 림비신 바 마마마 뉴뉴 매봐서 그그그치네 매봐서 차상 장마를 쇠 사바 있네 데니고 난기 네 균 함제도 대비 셈게랑 오지 샤용도 나 상경원 사지 차고로 와지 상계세대 제가 상계세대 현대 진의 추라야 멤버제 아주게 셈게 라신 의사와서 어디 라신 균 탐제의 자와디 여바디 다디 균기 로버기 디미기 균 바샤다 베파 dum되바디 디장모세 둘로마서나 주제 장모세데 셈데 장모세데 제가 디 장모세데다 소소라랑의 전마도 현다기 직수에 투에 매버다 소소게 셈 장모세데 소소라랑 공ገብ체 아니 셈 경행행비초까지 장모세가 차고를 제자디 다 상지게 손에디 네 아니 네네 랍도 상부 최시장스 결혼을 장모세 타기 림바 야 오징에 시에데 결혼 장모선 장모 책 말했어 지도 숨어라다
The three jewels of refuge. The first is the Buddha jewels. The Buddha is the founder, the founding teacher. The third jewel, the Sangha, they are our companions, those who guide and accompany us on our spiritual development. The second jewel, the Dharma, that is the actual refuge. So the first, the Buddha, is the founder, the teacher. The third, the Sangha, are companions. And the Dharma is the actual refuge. Or instead of refuge, we can translate it as protection. So the Dharma is the actual protection. This is what we cultivate within us. And by cultivating the Dharma within us, we gain protection from suffering. We develop our own protection from suffering. And where we develop the Dharma, of course, is in our mind, hearing teachings and reflecting on them, meditating on them, becoming ever more habituated to the varying aspects of the Dharma. In this way, we transform our mind. So actually, the nature of our mind and the nature of the mind of the Buddhas is no different. They are identical. The only difference, and it is a major difference, is that our mind is obscured by the adventitious afflictions. So these afflictions that obscure our mind they are temporary, they are adventitious, which means they can be removed. So our mind is only temporarily afflicted. And therefore, by applying the teachings, cultivating them within our mind, we will slowly remove the layers of obscuration that obscures the true nature of our mind. And eventually, when one attains the state of liberation or even the state of omniscience, our pure nature of our mind will shine through. And we'll be able to act in accordance with our real nature, act in accordance with reality. So who is it that can purify our own mind? It's no one other than ourselves. The Buddha, in fact, said quite explicitly that he cannot remove our suffering. He cannot wash away our obscurations. Only we ourselves can do that.
Lama da yuen Geshe Thubten Rabten and Delia and Devachea Samda. Dine Tone and G Luma Yisumi Nichu Divasat Sawakin Jimmy Sambegi Manzugeta, G Tsutum Soya de Samda Roger, Chesna, didn't Kabachen, the negative top to Goya Watelia, Tangi Luma Yisumi Chutim and the Sungi in Sebeda, and Shala Luma Yisumi was Shala Nova Sawakin Jimmy Sambe Samdayada, and the Toneda. Deepa Poyada, and the Kawa come to the Truber Chiki in Sebigi and some diada. Then that chick, Koviki, Yuen, that chick, Dunga, that chick, the name about me by your Kovi, you and Dile, Jogo, or little bit. Taba said Tobudua, Sambigi, some diary. The nigga that the Anna Rani Jibuts and Mayimba, she has some Jatamje, Rana, and Dewa Duba, Dunga, Jibari, there's a some Jatamje, and the Dungada, Casadewa, the Diana, Sambigi. Jabakumia, that's some Jatamje Dunga Tower, sure, some big and then Ninja some dia. That's some Jentajo Dunga Java than the Yudu idea, me Chipando Tugi, some big some time. The turning some Jatamje Donalia, and the San Yuko Topper show, Sebi, and Jashu same some da. Dene and Denege, Dushinanga, some chick dinner tiding, Yana and tiding, as you come said, that Gomiala, and chicky, Denege. Chica suit me but say to the some nache, Chicomba in the down to Comra Chago comes to Rada, the negata, Yamlin J said, Yamlin J said, the nigger some lawyer tiding on to get the Anne and Tamben and somebody, Ya Chick Comdirosh, Chick Pan, Cocaso Comdicha, the Com said, Tiso Comdicha, Comdicha, and the Comdicha, and the Nibal Masona, and the Kitina. Do Sarachik some neat and getting at the answers, some lawyer, then Lamsa, Jayong or Chingor, Teletus Comdi to war, what the two sene, and the negate that Jay answer that chicken. That's all. Tebats and Mayimba, Dunyams Lengures, Geshimbore, so I did that dinner some daddy, two sene and Tube, Dunyams Lembadi, done that did two sene, now why Geshimbore, or did what that.
Furthermore, in the meditation, when you're reflecting on refuge, you can also recall the many qualities of the Buddha, as well as the great kindness that he showed beings, and thereby build that further by looking at one's own spiritual teachers, one's own lamas, and recalling their tremendous qualities and kindness. And when a sense of deep appreciation as well as closeness arises within you towards the Buddha and one's lamas, make the commitment to them. I will not harm others. I will not harm others through my physical behavior, my speech, or even my way of thinking. So this is a mind of ethical restraint, where you commit to not performing harm. And if your expression is, I won't harm others, it includes, I will not harm myself. Moreover, make the commitment, I'll make the very most of this precious human rebirth, which includes not creating the causes for further suffering, and now by the promise I've already made that I won't bring harm to others, I help to reduce the possibility of creating causes for further suffering. And then thereafter reflect extensively on the sufferings of samsara, recognizing that no matter where one finds oneself in, or whatever situation, there is suffering as long as one is bound at samsara. There is no peace to be found. And the suffering that one experiences all comes from that same cause of the afflictions. These afflictions that have been and continue to be and will continue to torment us until we destroy them, cut them loose. Here we give rise to definite emergence, the determination to emerge from these suffering realms of samsara. When that has arisen powerfully in you, you're ready to then make your mind even more expansive, recognizing that every other person is in the same position as you, tormented by their afflictions, but longing to be freed from this torment. And generate the wish, may they be freed of all forms of suffering. May they be free of their afflictions and their causes. May they have, and thereafter, that's a mind of compassion. Thereafter generate the mind of love. May all beings abide in peace. May they only cultivate causes for happiness. Take these minds of love and compassion, developing them further, to the point where one feels merely wishing for the well-being of others is insufficient. I need to help others. I need to provide them guidance in how to cultivate the causes of happiness and abandon the causes for suffering. I have to do that. This is my responsibility. But to actually fulfill this, I need to become a Buddha because I'm not yet skilled enough. I need to eradicate my own afflictions and develop my own good qualities so I can be of real use to others, and thereby develop bodhicitta. And thereafter, one concludes with the meditation on the 6 perfections. So these are all the steps. You can do them slowly or briefly. But what's important is that you do the meditation repeatedly over a sustained period. So some days, if time is restricted, just do it quickly like we've done now. Other days where you have more time, spend more time on these various steps. But what's crucial is the repeated reflection. Repetition is imperative, because this word meditation has as its synonyms habituation or familiarization. Because what we're trying to do is develop our habituation to wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking, and thereby break our habituation to unwholesome, non-virtuous ways of thinking. And this is how we take the words that we've received, these spiritual instructions, and we put them into practice. We cultivate them in our own hearts. This is how we ensure that we are not just mere listeners, and we do not leave this precious opportunity empty-handed. Then thank you. We'll conclude there for tonight and continue tomorrow morning. Thank you.